Under a stormy sky, lightning flashes over a lakeside estate, setting a grim and dramatic scene. A massive bolt of lightning cracks across the dark, turbulent sky. A young woman with mismatched purple and orange-red eyes sinks into the depths of the water, her eyes snapping open in sudden shock. As she drifts deeper, she reaches for a blue beaded necklace floating just beyond her grasp. She struggles out of the water, gasping for air as she crawls onto the grassy bank. Soaking wet, she stands with grim determination, thinking, "I'm back," and wondering if the heavens have granted her, Ning Huaimin, a second chance. Clenching her fists as she ponders her second chance, she is startled by the sudden sound of a baby's cry. Wah! Confused, Ning Huaimin looks around the empty clearing, wondering where the infant's cry is coming from. The cry echoes from a nearby estate, where a voice announces the birth of a young miss. An older woman holds a crying newborn with light purple hair, while another attendant praises the baby's strong cries as a sign of future greatness. Wah! The newborn baby lets out a loud, tearful wail. Her orange-red eyes stream with tears as she continues to cry with all her might. The reincarnated baby, Yuji, celebrates her good fortune. As the Anping prince's daughter, her life should be effortless. Her joy turns to despair as she realizes the bad news. She's about to die because her mother, Liu Ruyan, is the villainess of the story. Yuji recalls the story's plot, identifying her scumbag father, Zhu Qiaosheng, as the male lead and her mother as a mere cannon fodder antagonist. The situation worsens as she remembers that her mother and the female lead gave birth on the same night, prompting her father to order the baby swapped. An old nursemaid holds the genuine article while looking down at the counterfeit in a basket, worried their crying will wake the madam. Yuji recalls her original fate to be smothered during the swap, a pawn in a twisted game. As a hand covers her face, she internally bemoans her catastrophically perfect start. The nursemaid hesitates, wondering if she actually suffocated the infant, while Yuji cleverly decides to play dead. Believing the baby is dead, the nursemaid places her in a basket next to the other child, intending to follow the prince's orders to dispose of her. Eek! Yuji suddenly yanks the other baby's ear, determined to make her scream and ruin the plan. Startled by the sudden wailing, the nursemaid looks on in confusion, as Yuji urges the other baby to cry even louder. After startling the other infant into screaming, Yuji takes her turn, letting out a powerful cry of her own. Gasp! Startled from her rest, Ruyan jolts awake in bed. Ruyan wonders if she heard her child speak, but an attendant dismisses it as a trick of the mind while the babies continue to wail. The attendant is shocked to hear two babies crying, then realizes something is terribly wrong and calls for guards to fetch her daughter. Ordering the old nursemaid arrested, the attendant watches as the woman tries to flee the scene. A furious young Jujimo bursts in, demanding to know what the witch is doing to his sister. A blue-eyed woman looks on as the servants stare in shock at the two identical young misses. A promotional banner is displayed for a Scanlation group's website. The attendant rushes to her madam, holding an empty basket to show her the situation. As Jimo holds the captured nursemaid, Ruyan looks on in distress when a servant announces that the prince has arrived. Her husband, Zhu Qiaosheng, enters the room and demands to know what is happening. The servant girl runs to him, frantically explaining that the nursemaid was bribed to swap their child with a smuggled infant. Zhu Qiaosheng listens with a stern, shocked expression. With both babies now side by side, he is told that the commotion prevented anyone from getting a good look, making it impossible to tell them apart. He turns to Ruyan for her opinion, and she reaches a hand toward the two infants, one with green eyes, the other with orange-red. The green-eyed baby bites Ruyan's finger, causing her to flinch. Yuji is internally enraged, thinking the other baby is trying to steal her mother. She protectively grabs her mother's finger, looking up at Ruyan with wide, innocent eyes. Ruyan stares down at Yuji, her red eyes widening in surprise. As Yuji babbles, Ruyan wonders if she's experiencing a psychic mother-daughter bond, while Zhu Xiaosheng looks on. Zhu Qiaosheng angrily points his finger at the captive nursemaid, demanding she reveal which child is Ruyan's. The nursemaid points to the green-eyed baby, declaring her the true daughter, while Yuji looks on disapprovingly. Ruyan looks at her husband in disbelief, questioning how the man she thought was faithful could have another woman. Zhu Qiaosheng picks up the green-eyed baby, vowing to deal with the criminal and ordering his guards to execute the other child. Ruyan desperately pleads with her husband to wait and investigate before acting so rashly. She grows deeply suspicious, noting his unusual eagerness to have the other child killed. A young man named Zhu Jian, the third son, interrupts, suggesting they torture the nursemaid for information. The woman immediately confesses she swapped the baby so her own granddaughter could have a better life. A baby with short, light purple hair sleeps peacefully, unaware of her inner thoughts about being coffin-bound. Now depicted with a halo, the baby prepares for reincarnation, bidding a silent farewell to her loving mother. The baby's mother, a woman with purple hair and striking red eyes, warns a gray-haired man that a cunning wretch is scheming against them. Dead silence falls as the awakened baby stares up with wide, orange-red eyes, ready for a fight. As her cheek is pinched, the baby internally panics, realizing a blood test is coming and suspects the water has been tampered with. Lying in a wicker basket, the baby silently begs the heavens to punish the schemer responsible for her predicament. A servant approaches the gray-haired man holding a different baby, reporting that an old woman claims the basket child is her granddaughter and suggesting a test. The purple-haired mother looks distressed, as the baby thinks this world is just one big political drama. The scene pauses, hinting at more to come. The gray-haired man, holding the baby, agrees to proceed with the test in a room full of attendants. The purple-haired mother exchanges a meaningful glance with a servant girl, who has her brown hair in buns, a silent understanding passing between them. An elder woman in a red robe is approached by two servants, one carrying a bowl of water. Trip! One person's white shoe deliberately trips the elder woman in red shoes. Thud! The elder woman crashes to the floor as the bowl of water goes flying. Sprawled on the ground, the elder woman immediately cries out that someone pushed her, pleading her case to the royals. The purple-haired mother coolly dismisses the accusation, questioning why her loyal servant, El Bai, would ever push the woman. The gray-haired man orders El Bai to fetch fresh water so they can perform the test again. A long-haired man named Zhu Jimo arrives, and the gray-haired man greets him as Mor. A younger boy with grayish hair excitedly runs towards the newcomer, calling him elder brother. Zhu Jimo formally greets the gray-haired man and purple-haired woman as his father and mother. Zhu Jimo insists the blood test is unreliable, reminding his mother of her pre-existing cold syndrome, which a physician warned could be passed to the child, shocking the baby. What? The baby glares angrily, as if blaming the author for this ridiculous plot twist. Her father looks concerned, noting that summoning a physician will take a long time. Zhu Zimo smiles, revealing he has already brought a physician with him to check on his sister. An elderly physician with a goatee apologizes for his intrusion as he approaches the mother and baby. After checking her forehead, the physician urgently declares the child has a high fever, shocking everyone. What? The mother holds her sick child with a worried expression, as the father looks on grimly. The mother gazes down at her feverish daughter, her red eyes filled with concern and love. With tears in her eyes, she fiercely vows that her daughter will recover from this illness. The sick baby is carefully passed from one person to another. The father calmly tells his son, Zhu Jimo, that there is no need for beatings. The father orders the guards to imprison the schemers, while the mother smirks, vowing to flay them alive if her daughter dies, which the baby finds awesome. Zhu Jimo watches his parents with a confused look, asking what is wrong with them. The scene shifts to a dark room, where a young man with gray hair sleeps fitfully. Wheeze! He wakes with a sudden gasp, his eyes revealed to be two different colors, one purple and one orange-red. A servant rushes to his side, asking if the seventh prince is unwell as he clutches his head in pain. The seventh prince recalls a feverish dream where he heard a faint cry, like someone calling for their mother. Sitting up in bed, he wonders who he heard, questioning if he's been poisoned with hallucinogens. A brief pause in the story's flow. The mother, now identified as the princess consort, gently cradles her baby in bed, telling her to sleep tight. Though Elbai offers to take the child so she can rest, the princess consort refuses, blaming her own carelessness and insisting she stay by her daughter's side. She looks down lovingly as the baby gazes back at her with wide, intelligent orange eyes. As the princess consort wonders at the baby's intense stare, Elbai excitedly announces that the fifth young miss is awake and rushes off to get the physician. The narrative highlights the mother's formidable reputation as the legendary Empress Ruyan, a dominant figure in the world of novels. The baby, Little Five, happily thinks she finally has a mom, while Ruyan lovingly promises that she and the baby's brothers will protect her. Ruyan reflects on her husband, Zhu Chaosheng, realizing his reputation as a devoted husband was a lie, until her daughter's birth revealed his true love. Ruyan leans in close to her baby's face, startling her. Ruyan gives her daughter a gentle kiss on the cheek. The baby is overcome with joy, delighting in how sweet and soft her new mother is. Zhu Zimo arrives, respectfully greeting his mother Ruyan as she cradles the baby. Stepping closer, he looks at his baby sister and asks his mother how little Five is doing. Leaning in, he observes with a smile that she seems to be well now. His tone turns serious as he tells his mother there's something he doesn't understand. He questions why she imprisoned the old woman, barred even their father, and confiscated the basin, asking if she suspects the water was tampered with. Ruyan remains silent, looking down with a thoughtful expression. Cradled in her mother's arms, the baby looks on with wide, curious eyes. Ruyan changes the subject, turning to ask Zujimo what he thinks of his father. He pauses, then asks if she truly wants him to speak his mind without reservation. He recounts how rumors of another heir spread after he renounced succession, forcing a desperate woman to swear her innocence to Ruyan. In a flashback, their father petitions the emperor to name his third son as heir, vowing that only children of his lawful wife shall inherit. Officials praise the ending prince's devotion to his wife, urging the emperor to promote him. Jimo explains that's how their father's devoted reputation began, but he has always doubted that facade and asks how he truly treats her. Ruyan looks downcast, realizing with regret that Jimo warned her long ago, but she was blinded by love. The baby reaches up with her tiny hand, gently touching her mother's cheek in a comforting gesture. As he playfully touches the baby's nose, she internally identifies him as the smartest man in the story and the first to die. He pulls back with a quizzical, a hint of confusion on his face. The scene flashes to a grim memorial tablet, Liu Ruyan's death. The baby recalls Jimo's tragic future, grieving his mother's orchestrated death, investigating his brothers, and surviving an assassination attempt. He then became the feared 9,000 years, a man of absolute power who framed innocence and crushed his enemies. His brutal end is shown drawn and quartered, a bloody and tragic fate. Back in the present, the baby thinks of him simply as bro. She grabs his finger with surprising strength, silently vowing to make sure he becomes a decent human this time. Ruyan looks up, her expression one of quiet contemplation. Jimo ponders his mother's sudden change, connecting it to his sister's strange actions and wondering if little Five can predict the future. As Ruyan worries about her daughter's abilities, an attendant announces the prince's arrival, interrupting the tense moment. Her husband, Zhu Tiaosheng, enters the room, stating he heard little Five was awake. He leans over the bed, telling Ruyan that thoughts of their daughter's suffering kept him sleepless all night. As he reaches out, asking to hold their child, Ruyan looks hesitant. Shrink back. The baby flinches away from her father's touch as he lifts her, while a servant wonders why the madam is so tense. Ruyan and Zhu Jimo watch with nervous expressions, thinking the father hasn't noticed their daughter's strange behavior. The father holds his daughter, a faint, unreadable smile on his face. Drip, drip. He looks down in stunned silence as a wet spot appears on his robes. He smiles it off, claiming it's a blessing that shows she favors him as he accepts a cloth from Elbai. The baby beams up at her mother, thinking her father is thanking her for the gift. Zhu Qiaosheng asks Ruyan if she has chosen a name for their daughter yet. She reminds him of their agreement. If it were a girl, her name would be Yuji. He laughs it off, blaming his poor memory and asking his madam for forgiveness. The baby, Yuji, internally fumes, certain he only forgot because he's busy with another woman's romance. Ruyan's expression turns cold and distant as she listens. She tells her husband to rest, but Yuji frantically thinks for her mom to not get gaslighted by the scum man. As he sweetly reassures Ruyan, a servant bursts in screaming that a fire has broken out in the rear courtyard. Shocked, Ruyan immediately asks about the fate of the old woman and the other child. Her husband coolly dismisses her concern, telling her to rest while he handles the matter. Zhu Jimo watches his father's retreating back with a silent, suspicious gaze. He turns to his mother and formally announces that he will take his leave. Ruyan calls out his name, watching her son depart with a look of deep concern. Her expression hardens into one of cold, unwavering resolve. A promotional banner for a manga website is displayed against a fiery background. A promotional image asks for editors and provides a QR code. A sudden awakening, revealing two different colored Isone purple, one orange-red staring wide with shock. The seventh prince jolts upright in bed, startled from his sleep. He clutches his chest, sweating and breathing heavily, relieved that it was just a nightmare. He wonders if his dream was an omen when a servant enters, announcing that Master Mingye has returned and has been summoned by His Majesty. The seventh prince listens in silence, his expression unreadable. The scene shifts to Ruyan checking on her baby Yuji, who has just sneezed, and she asks if the child is cold. Yuji is relieved it was just a dream, frantically thinking to her mother that she had a terrifying nightmare about becoming a killer. Ruyan simply smiles, amused by her daughter's flailing. Leaning in, Ruyan sweetly reassures her baby that it was only a dream, gushing internally over how cute her child is. The scene transitions to a grand, multi-tiered palace complex nestled among trees. The seventh prince approaches and greets a bald monk in red and yellow robes, addressing him as Master Mingye. The monk, Master Mingye, greets the seventh prince in return, stating that he was expected and asking if he has come with questions. The seventh prince smiles, acknowledging that nothing escapes the master's insight. He explains his recurring, incomprehensible dream about a young girl and asks if it is an omen, but Master Mingye cryptically replies that what is destined cannot be undone. The prince looks away, troubled by the idea that his fate is already sealed. He ponders the meaning of his dream, concluding that he is destined to personally hand a woman a blade and let her kill him. Turning his back, he formally thanks the master for his wisdom. Master Mingye surprises him by stating that he, however, does not believe in fate. The seventh prince scoffs, calling fate an excuse for cowards, and vows that this time, anyone who stands in his way will not live to regret it. He recalls his dream, connecting the grown-up woman to the baby and remembering details about Nanyi and a woman who once accused him of destroying her home and killing her brother. Recalling from his past life that Nanyue is in border negotiations, he decides it's time to pay them a visit. Master Mingye watches him go, offering a quiet prayer. 1 month later, a palace courtyard is filled with people on a festive evening. At Yuji's full-month celebration, guests congratulate her parents and praise how much she looks like her mother, Ruyan. Held by her mother, Yuji feels uneasy, sensing that she has forgotten something important. A beautiful woman in an elegant pink and gold robe arrives, her presence commanding the attention of the court ladies. Addressed as Your Majesty, the woman graciously tells the attendees to rise, saying there's no need for formality at her niece's celebration. The woman takes the baby from Ruyan, lovingly introducing herself as Little Five's aunt. Yuji is struck with a sudden, horrifying realization. Her aunt is about to die. The narrative reveals the aunt is Liu Rutang, the villainess from a tragic novel, infamous as the male lead's childhood crush and a notorious schemer. To secure the crown prince's position, she ruthlessly forced many imperial concubines to have abortions. In the end, this vicious white moonlight perished, while the male lead she loved chased after another woman, a future that horrifies Yuji. A guest points out the red birthmark on Yuji's forehead, comparing it to a mark of a divine child. Yuji internally praises her aunt's beauty, and the aunt reacts with a startled. The aunt is stunned, wondering if she actually heard the baby speak. Yuji silently laments that her beautiful aunt is destined to die soon, all because of a scumbag named Shen Heng. Crushed by the weight of this knowledge, Yuji fumes over the injustice of her aunt's tragic end. The aunt stands frozen, holding the baby as if struck by lightning. Her eyes widen in terror as she processes the baby's warning. Shen Heng is going to kill her. She recalls Shen Heng's false promises of love and his connection to another woman, realizing with horror that her sacrifices were for a man investing in someone else. Ruyan approaches, asking what's wrong, but her sister deflects, suggesting they spend time catching up. Ruyan smiles warmly, agreeing that she would love nothing more. The aunt hands a token to her attendant, Hongju, ordering her to inform the palace she's staying overnight and vowing to deal with the man who has grown a second heart. Yuji is shocked that her aunt decided to stay on her own, realizing all her planned crying was unnecessary. The scene shifts to an early morning view of several horse-drawn carriages being prepared for a journey. A man in a dark official's uniform watches the silhouette of a person inside a nearby carriage. An attendant asks the person inside the carriage, a young man addressed as Your Highness, why they have stopped to rest outside the capital instead of entering. A different attendant advises His Highness that rushing into the capital could be seen as a sign of fear by Nanyue during diplomatic negotiations. His Highness concedes to his attendant's wisdom, agreeing to rest at an inn outside the city. He grimly notes his opponents went to great trouble to keep him out of the capital, yet waited a full month to make their move. When his attendant notices something about his eyes, he dismisses the concern, stating it's best to maintain a low profile. After an attendant confirms that preparations are complete, His Highness looks down and somberly declares that tonight will be a sleepless night. The scene shifts to a lavish banquet hall, where an announcer heralds the arrival of the Empress. A young girl with butterfly hair clips rushes in and kneels, desperately pleading with Her Majesty for justice. The Empress, a woman with golden eyes wearing an ornate red and gold robe, looks down with a calm but questioning expression, asking what has happened. Elsewhere, Ruyan holds a frantic Yuji, who suddenly remembers she'd forgotten about the mess her third brother was about to cause. Yuji recalls how her father intentionally raised her third brother to be useless, indulging him until he became a degenerate, a downfall that began at this very banquet. She remembers that her third brother inappropriately offended the top scholar's daughter, but her mother and aunt sided with him, publicly shaming the victim for making false accusations. The memory shows the lone, kneeling girl facing the imposing figures of the two noblewomen and their entourage. Horrified, Yuji recalls the tragic outcome. The shamed girl took her own life, and her father's revenge ultimately led to their mother being brutally mutilated by the emperor. Back in the present, the girl with butterfly hair clips tearfully tells Ruyan that she's been wronged, but is unable to explain how. Ruyan and the Empress listen intently to the girl's plea, their expressions thoughtful. Ruyan gently offers to speak with the girl privately in the next hall, along with the Empress. The girl with butterfly hair clips looks up with a glimmer of hope and agrees to the private audience. Just then, a young man with wavy gray hair enters the room, asking if his mother, Ruyan, had called for him. Ruyan furiously throws her teacup at him, demanding to know what shameless act he has committed at such a young age. Filled with righteous fury, Yuji internally urges her mother to string him up for a beating now, to prevent having to trample on his grave later. Taking her daughter's silent advice, Ruyan strikes her son with a resounding slap across the face. Ruyan then turns to the girl and apologizes for her failure in discipline, as Zijian shouts in protest that he is the heir to the royal estate. The Empress steps forward, challenging Zijian's defiance by coolly asking if he believes she holds no authority over him. Enraged, the Empress orders her guards to drag the disrespectful heir outside and give him 20 heavy strokes. As guards haul the struggling Zijian away, the girl with butterfly hair clips watches in stunned silence. The Empress promises to bring her son for a formal apology, but the girl, grateful for their support, states she will not pursue the matter further. With the matter resolved, Ryan instructs an attendant to escort the fifth miss back to rest. Held by an attendant, Yuji internally whines, complaining that she was just getting into the drama. Unseen by the children, the Empress quietly orders her guards to investigate everyone associated with the heir. Ruyan, her eyes burning with rage, vows to execute anyone found to have lured her son into indulgence. Later that evening, an attendant holds Yuji in a quiet courtyard under the moonlight. Yuji gazes at the full moon, sighing over her fate of being stuck in a tragic novel and wondering if she will ever return to her own world. She flashes back to her past life, recalling her happiness at finally having a mother this time, but also her regret for getting sucked into the novel and becoming a keyboard warrior. Cradled safely, she laments that if only she hadn't been goaded by online comments, she wouldn't have ended up in this messed up tragedy. Suddenly, a masked man with a sword drops from the sky, lunging directly at Yuji. The attendant, LB, reacts instantly, blocking the assassin's hand with her own. The masked man deftly snatches Yuji from the attendant's arms, relieved that he made it in time. As LB screams for the guards, reporting an assassin, the masked man holds Yuji tight and prepares his escape. With tears welling in her eyes, Yuji mentally bids farewell to her mother and her embarrassing past. Wah! She lets out a final, dramatic wail, saying goodbye to the world full of lunatics as she is carried off into the night. The scene cuts to a snow-covered inn located just outside the capital city gates. An assassin in black violently stabs his sword through a bedroll. Damn it! The assassin curses, realizing his target is not in the bed. Two assassins discover they've been tricked and that their target, a young man named Ning Huaimin, has escaped. They order their men to kill anyone his age to find him. Meanwhile, the masked man carrying Yuji hurries through a deserted cobblestone alley. He observes that the Zhu family has already locked down the city and deployed patrol guards. Realizing the baby is slowing him down, he decides to hide her temporarily and come back for her once the patrols have passed. Poo-ha. After he covers her mouth, Yuji spits out a small object, internally fuming about this world's obsession with suffocating people. MMMPH. The masked man gently places the still protesting baby into a basket on the ground. He closes the basket's lid, hiding Yuji in the shadows of the alley. The masked man flees through a moonlit alley, his long gray ponytail swinging as he runs. A hooded youth with messy gray hair and pinkish-purple eyes looks back cautiously down the empty street. The youth walks alone, realizing their disguise failed as the entire city is now under lockdown. Resigned, the youth decides their only option is to lay low for a while. Poo poo poo! A hand rests on a wicker basket lid as something is spat out from within. The hooded youth looks down in confusion, vowing to teach the baby a lesson about underestimating people. Inside the dark basket, Yuji fumes, frustrated by her uselessly tiny baby hands. Nearby, a guard leader with gray hair and purple eyes berates his men for losing their target. The hooded youth sets Yuji down, but she quickly grabs their sleeve to stop them from leaving. Yuji looks up sweetly, trying to bargain for her freedom by promising to treat her rescuer like family. The youth reflects on the strange, rich-looking child who can speak telepathically, just like in their dream, but feels helpless to raise her. With tears in her eyes, Yuji offers up an imaginary giant pearl, lamenting how much it hurts to part with it. The youth flashes back to a memory of a dark-haired woman holding a pearl, realizing the child from their dream was also obsessed with one. Threatening to leave her at the magistrate's office, the youth is met with Yuji's tearful gratitude, as she calls them a living saint. The hooded youth picks Yuji up from the ground once more. Suddenly, the guards surround them, with one pointing and declaring he's found the brat. Yuji is surprised, as the hooded youth realizes their pursuers were clever enough to circle back. A promotional image shows a chibi Yuji next to a chibi boy, while a sharp-toothed woman with white hair is displayed below. The youth whispers instructions for Yuji to hold her breath, while she confidently agrees, having faked her death before to survive. Toss! The youth throws a smoke bomb, and Yuji tumbles through the air in confusion as the cloud erupts below. Dizzy from the fall, Yuji mentally curses her captors as heartless cowards for attacking a child. Waking up in the cold, she briefly wonders if her kidnapping was just a terrible nightmare. Her hope fades as she sees the hooded youth beside her, blood staining their clothes. The nightmare was real. Yuji recognizes the unconscious youth as the person who was being chased earlier. Splash, splash! She desperately tries to crawl away from her wounded captor. Waking up, the hooded youth looks down at her with a blood-stained shoulder, dryly noting she's not dead. Panicked, Yuji points and internally screams that his shoulder is bleeding heavily. The hooded youth stares back, completely speechless at her frantic concern. The youth looks down with weary, pained eyes, exhausted from the chase and their injury. Yuji chides her captor for being cryptic instead of just telling her about the wound sooner. As Yuji sleeps, the youth watches her, noting that this mischievous gremlin is nothing like the heartbroken woman from their dream who killed them. A memory of a crying woman with white hair and red eyes surfaces as the youth concludes they cannot be the same person. Unable to resist, the youth gently pokes the sleeping Yuji's cheek, who scrunches her face in annoyance. By daylight, the youth holds Yuji, contemplating how strange she is, while she recalls her survival tactics. The youth stands, deciding to spare Yuji but leave her behind, just as she wakes up. Yep! Yuji excitedly reaches out, ready to be taken along on the journey. She watches in disbelief as the hooded youth walks away, desperately calling out for Big Bro not to abandon her. Sobbing, UV internally pleads to be abandoned on a busy street, lamenting that she's not picky. The hooded youth looks down at her as she realizes in surprise that he hasn't left yet. With a gentle smile, the hooded youth begins to explain that he was going to leave her. Suddenly, he looks up, startled by an unseen arrival, as Yuji wonders what is happening now. A cute interlude shows a chibi Yuji with sparkling, excited eyes. Now being carried on his back, Yuji feels guilty for having cursed her rescuer's entire family just a minute ago. A man with long, dark hair and white robes appears, joyfully recognizing little sister, prompting the youth to immediately turn and flee. The man glares, demanding to know who the youth is and why he has his sister. Yuji panics, recognizing her Big Bro and mentally urging the youth to return her before the situation gets out of hand. Leaning close to his face, she internally pleads with her rescuer not to cause a dramatic misunderstanding. The man in white introduces himself as Ning Chi of an escort agency, apologizing for his aggression and explaining he thought the youth was an attacker. Holding Yuji, Ningqi questions how the youth, a supposed member of an escort family, ended up in such a dire situation. As the youth looks down, defeated, Yuji internally compares her situation to a medieval version of, quote, Princess Snow White and the Seven Short Guys. A woman with purple hair calls out for Little Five, as Yuji realizes she's one of the dwarves, and Ningqi looks confused. Ruyan rushes forward and embraces Yuji, tearfully asking who kidnapped her and what happened. The youth watches Ruyan's emotional reunion, his thoughts focused on the woman holding the child. He remembers his dream of a white-haired woman and realizes with shock that Yuji is the child who kills him in that vision. Ruyan holds the now-awake Yuji close, a single tear of relief escaping her eye. Crying with joy, Yuji internally announces her return to her mother, giving all the credit to her kiddo bro for saving her life. Ruyan turns to the youth, expressing her deep gratitude and offering him a place to stay at the estate. Yuji enthusiastically encourages her kiddo bro to accept her mother's generous offer without hesitation. With a gentle smile, the youth softly agrees. As he follows Ruyan and Yuji, Ruyan's expression hardens as she internally vows that this time, she will not go easy on her enemies. Arriving at the Anping Prince's estate, an attendant greets young Master Ning, just as Zhu Xiaosheng rushes in asking about Little Five. Yuji gurgles happily in her mother's arms as her father, Zhu Qiaosheng, approaches them. Zhu Qiaosheng expresses his relief and asks if the culprits are caught so he can plead for mercy, but Yuji internally seethes at his pretense. With tears in her eyes, Yuji mentally accuses her father of being the true mastermind behind her kidnapping. She realizes her scumfather is unaware of the latest developments and feels lucky that she is still unable to speak. Ruyan covers Yuji's eyes, telling her husband that the kidnappers escaped but left behind physical evidence, sparking his curiosity. From the side, Ningqi shrewdly observes that the prince seems displeased by his daughter's return, and the princess consort is aware of it. The youth smirks, finding the estate's web of intrigue with a scheming father, a mother with a hidden agenda, and an all-seeing baby more entertaining than he expected. Yuji stares at the youth, wondering why her kiddo bro is suddenly wearing the expression of a classic villain. Wow. Yuji bursts into tears, which Ruyan uses as an excuse to end the tense conversation, while Yuji internally calls her father an idiot for being so easily manipulated. Zhu Qiaosheng sheepishly agrees he wasn't thinking clearly before turning his attention to the youth, asking who he is. Ruyan explains that the youth is the one who saved Little Five, and he stands humbly before them. Zhu Qiaosheng formally welcomes the youth into his home as his daughter's savior, and the youth thanks him. An inkstone is thrown violently, shattering on the ground in a moment of fury. In his private room, Zhu Qiaosheng fumes over his failed plan to replace Yuji with another child, enraged that a random brat foiled him and left Ruyan with evidence. Deciding he cannot risk being discovered, he resolves to strike first. With a determined glare, he seems to envision a woman in pale robes falling, a casualty of his next move. At night, a white bird flies past the window of the room where the youth is staying. The youth reflects on how Northern Yin plans to use his faked death to declare war, a more potent pretext than the diplomat's death they used in his previous life. Watching the bird disappear, he realizes his early arrival has delayed his enemy's plans and resolves to do everything in his power to stop them. His thoughts are interrupted as he turns in surprise, suddenly questioning the princess consort's intentions. A female attendant approaches, informing young Master Ning that Her Highness will see him shortly. As the youth begins to ask about the meeting, his attention is caught by a small movement to the side. He turns in wide-eyed shock to see Yuji precariously crawling along the edge of a desk. Yuji loses her footing and tumbles off the desk, clutching a small green object in her hand. In a flash, the youth dives forward and catches the falling baby in his arms. Holding Yuji safely, he listens as she mentally explains that her mother is just picking out clothes for him, her expression comically shifty. Looking startled, the youth watches as Yuji's tiny hands offer him a bright green orb, a gift from her. With a tear rolling down her cheek, Yuji insists he take the gift, lamenting the pain of parting with it as the youth looks on blankly. Holding the green jade, The youth wonders how she could give away something she cherishes, questioning if she is truly fated to end his life. He recalls the girl from his dream and concludes that maybe, just maybe, this innocent child and that girl are not the same person. Cradling the baby, he blushes, wondering why he keeps softening towards her and if some twist of fate connects them. Yuji cries out in panic as she suddenly finds herself falling through the air. After tumbling onto the floor, she mentally scolds her kiddo bro for struggling to hold her when she isn't even heavy. An attendant announces the arrival of His Highness as Zhu Qiaosheng enters the room where the youth is holding Yuji. The youth greets the prince, who tells him not to stand on ceremony as he is his daughter's savior. With a slight smirk, Zhu Qiaosheng looks away, relieved that Liu Ruyan is not present. Kneeling before Yuji, he coos about whether Little Five missed her daddy and reveals he brought her a present. He presents a magnificent gold locket with an inlaid pink stone. As he lowers the locket toward her, Yuji stares up at it with wide, unblinking eyes. Lunge! Yuji suddenly bites down on her father's hand, internally fuming that the scumbag is trying to use a gift to manipulate her mother. As she continues biting his hand, he notes it doesn't hurt, while she scoffs at his foolish attempt to deceive someone with a, quote, God-level perspective. The youth pulls back as Zhu Qiaosheng glares, wondering what demon child keeps thwarting his plans and recalling a warning that this daughter would be his downfall. His expression hardening with murderous intent, Zhu Qiaosheng decides that the mother and daughter cannot be allowed to live. The youth holds a now sleepy Yuji, pondering how she knew the locket was poisoned and if her talk of a god's perspective means she can see the future. Ruyan enters the room in an elegant gown, calling out to young Master Ning. She watches silently as her husband, Zhu Qiaosheng, storms out of the room. Ruyan offers the youth some of her son's old clothes to wear, but he politely declines her kind gesture. Bowing respectfully, the youth excuses himself, claiming he has other matters to attend to. He walks away, convinced that his fate with Zhu Yuji is doomed, and that accepting her mother's kindness is merely pointless baggage. A cute interlude shows Ruyan asking a concerned Yuji what is wrong. As the youth walks along a stone path in the estate gardens, a voice calls out to the Seventh Highness. A blindfolded young man with gray hair warns the youth that he is being hunted and questions his decision to hide in the estate. The youth, now identified as the Seventh Prince, smiles and asks why the man, having recognized him, didn't expose him sooner. The blindfolded man, young Master Zhu, explains that because the prince saved his sister, the estate owes him a debt of gratitude. Young Master Zhu assures the prince he can leave whenever he is ready, and the prince thanks him for his help. The scene transitions, showing an autumn tree over the estate rooftops. Back in his room, the youth opens a small wooden box as an attendant walks away. He asks the attendant if the princess consort is in her pavilion, but learns she has already left for the palace. A small, pleased smile crosses his face as he softly says, "Good." He tells the attendant he will return later, but stops as he spots a surprised Yuji watching him from her room. Yeah! Yuji excitedly babbles from her table, calling out for her kiddo bro to come back. Turning around with a gentle expression, the youth agrees, saying he would be honored. Now sitting together, Yuji eagerly points at a lavish box, mentally urging her kiddo bro to open his gift. He wonders if she is giving him another present, while she internally decides the last gift wasn't enough and is now offering everything she owns. Her eyes sparkle as she declares them siblings from different parents, so he shouldn't feel awkward accepting her kindness. After pushing the gift box forward, Yuji promptly demands her milk bottle. In a warm and tender moment, the youth sits across from Yuji, holding a small cup of milk for her. Yuji proposes they forge their new sibling bond by drinking milk and challenges him to chug it like a champion. Huh? The youth stares back in utter confusion. He gently refuses, explaining that it's her ration and it wouldn't be right for him to drink it. From the doorway, an attendant reassures young Master Ning that it's just goat's milk and he should drink it. Yuji forcefully pushes the cup toward him, warning that she'll take his refusal as a sign of disrespect. A close-up shows his hand holding the cup with a subtle, almost imperceptible tremble. Resigned, he closes his eyes and drinks the entire cup of milk in one go. Thud! He slams the empty cup down on the table as a surprised Yuji looks on. Yuji reflects on the emotional trauma of watching her only ration be consumed, before she turns to stone and gently breaks from the sorrow. After the youth suddenly runs out of the room, a confused Yuji watches him go. Yuji sits puzzled, wondering why her casual complaint made him so upset, and realizing he's more sensitive than she is. The youth bursts out of the room and runs down a wooden hallway. He stumbles into his room and frantically searches on top of his bed. Feeling ill, he covers his mouth and lets out a pained gasp. He collapses onto the floor, weakened and struggling. Lying on his back, he glares angrily, convinced that Ju Yuji is cursed to clash with him at every turn. He reflects that at least he learned from her thoughts that she didn't suspect him, but now his opportunity to make a move is gone. Exhausted, he decides that maybe it is finally time for him to leave the estate. Yuji's wide, worried eyes appear in the darkness. Wah! Yuji suddenly appears at his bedside, asking if her kiddo is okay, which wakes the startled youth who asks why she's there. She mentally explains that her brother brought her after hearing he was in pain. Leaning over his sick-looking form, Yuji worriedly asks if her kiddo is sick. As Yuji climbs onto his back, the youth chokes out that he is allergic to goat's milk and pleads for her to let him go. After apologizing for her untrained limbs, Yuji furiously blames the goat for triggering his allergy, only to notice her kiddo has already fallen asleep. Lying on the sleeping youth's back, Yuji decides that with their new bond, he can't just apologize to her so easily. The youth awakens to find Yuji sleeping beside him, wondering who passes out mid-conversation as he recalls her chokehold and thinks he saw his great-grandma. A smug Yuji delivers a swift punch to the youth's cheek. The youth sits up in bed, looking tiredly at Yuji, who is sleeping soundly beside him. He gazes at the sleeping baby with a quiet, contemplative look. Young Master Zhu appears behind him, slyly asking if His Highness wishes to admire the moon with him. The youth considers pulling the blanket over his head to hide from the unexpected visitor. Facing young Master Zhu, the youth declines the offer, stating that his men have been waiting outside the estate for 2 days already. After the youth bids farewell, young Master Zhu wishes His Highness safe travels. Young Master Zhu quietly watches over his sleeping sister, Yuji. Walking in the garden, young Master Zhu asks Ruyan why the youth left so suddenly, and she speculates it must have been urgent family business. Ruyan enters her room and is greeted by Yuji, who excitedly calls out, "Yaya," from a nearby table. Snuggle. Ruyan lovingly embraces Yuji in a warm hug. Cradled by her mother, Yuji wonders how she got back to her room, just as young Master Zhu enters to tell Little Five he has some bad news. Young Master Zhu sadly informs a stunned Yuji that Ningqi is gone. Yuji internally panics, thinking her kiddo bro is dead and wondering how he could have died so quickly. Her brother quickly clarifies that gone meant left, not dead, explaining Ningqi went to fight his stepmother for his inheritance, much to Yuji's relief and annoyance. Yuji despairs, realizing she'll never see her kiddo bro again and feels her world crumbling. A surge of pure killing intent radiates from the furious baby. Ruyan and young Master Zhu exchange glances as Yuji continues to seethe in her mother's arms. Zhu Qiaosheng arrives, followed by an attendant in blue, his approach interrupting the moment. As Ruyan asks her husband why he is visiting, Yuji internally calls him a scumbag. He announces that priests from Qingyun Temple have arrived with an urgent matter. Zhu Qiaosheng smiles, explaining that Qingyun Temple is a highly significant place where the Empress Dowager gave birth to the Emperor. He gestures toward the doorway, where 2 priests are waiting to be received. Holding a very suspicious Yuji, Ruyan formally asks the priest the reason for his rare visit. Yuji thoughtfully concludes that based on her experience with dramas, uninvited priests are a clear sign that a villain is trying to frame the protagonist. The lead priest informs the prince's consort that his master sensed a cursed star's birth a month ago, and their investigation has led them here. Ruyan repeats his words with concern, questioning the existence of a cursed star born a month ago. As everyone stares at her, a confused Yuji points to herself. Huh? Yuji continues to point at her own face, completely baffled. Feigning outrage, Zhu Qiaosheng vehemently denies the possibility that his daughter could be a cursed star. The priest proposes a ritual at midnight to reveal the cursed star's identity, which Ruyan rejects, but Zhu Qiaosheng insists they must do it for Little Five's sake. As her father looks on with grim determination, Yuji has a flash of insight, remembering that he later betrays the country as a northern yin mole. She realizes he uses priests to spread rumors about the royal family's failing luck, as part of his plot to bring down the Nanyue Empire. Ruyan stares in horror, thinking to herself that he not only plotted against her, but betrays the entire nation as well. Holding a wide-eyed Yuji, Ruyan stares ahead with cold determination, her expression hardening after learning of her husband's betrayal. Elsewhere, the 7th prince scoffs at the news, realizing Zhu Qiaosheng is monstrously using his own daughter as bait for the priest's scheme. The prince's attendant nervously asks if they should send someone to intervene in the plot against Yuji. With a weary and cynical expression, the prince declines, stating he would love for someone else to take care of that walking headache for him. That night, as the lead priest announces the start of the ritual to the princess consort, a veiled Yuji sits nervously, certain the Taoist wants her dead. Just as Zhu Qiaosheng begins to address the priest, a loud voice from off-screen commands them to hold it. The city patrol arrives, led by a man in dark armor who orders the estate sealed. An onlooker recognizes him as General Pei. General Pei announces he is there by the Emperor's decree to lock down the estate and conduct a personal investigation into the, quote, disaster star. Ruyan and Zhu Qiaosheng exchange a worried glance, stunned by the sudden Imperial intervention. The lead priest begins chanting as he holds a yellow talisman, preparing to complete the ritual. He tosses the glowing talisman into a brazier, where it bursts into flame upon contact. A great fire erupts from the brazier, startling General Pei, Ruyan, and Zhu Qiaosheng. From the flames, a fiery image of a phoenix-like creature forms in the air. Staring at the mystical fire, General Pei turns his head and asks aloud, "5?" The crowd points toward a veiled Yuji, gasping in shock and identifying the fifth miss as the harbinger of disaster. Yuji sits silently, her expression unimpressed by the unfolding drama. Zhu Qiaosheng grabs the general's arm, desperately proclaiming his daughter's innocence, but General Pei coolly tells him to take it up with the emperor. As guards push Zhu Qiaosheng back, General Pei orders them to move forward. Looking past the guards, Zhu Qiaosheng notices with alarm that the ritual fire has not yet gone out. As the crowd wonders about new text appearing in the flames, a glowing Yuji internally reveals the twist. She's not a harbinger of disaster, but a divine maiden. Ruyan watches the scene unfold, a subtle, knowing smile gracing her lips. In a flashback, her son informs Ruyan that while the priests had official credentials, their identities couldn't be confirmed in time, hinting at a setup. Sigh. Ruyan and her son share a moment of weary resignation in a cute chibi interlude. Young Master Zhu then wonders where Little Five is, noting how strangely quiet it has become. A determined-looking Yuji is shown, ready to enact her plan. Ruyan gently pats Yuji's head, giving her silent encouragement. In a hilarious planning session, Yuji outlines her media strategy, culminating in a dramatic phoenix rebirth and a heroic last whisper for House Big Beauty. A smiling young Master Zhu confirms to his mother that it looks like Little Five has a plan. He proudly tells Ruyan he found evidence their father hired the Taoists and provided them with flammable liquid, prompting a pleased Yuji to realize her brother already knew the script. Ruyan clenches her fist, deciding to turn the tables by giving them the divine girl they weren't expecting. Yuji cheekily plans to use a Clo filter, and recalls how her kiddo bro rejected her gift, reaffirming her own schemes. With their plan in motion, Ruyan and young Master Zhu look away with strained expressions, while Yuji stares ahead with fierce determination. Back in the present, a veiled and glowing Yuji stands before the crowd as her family watches. Shocked, Yuji realizes she has been unexpectedly caught up in the divine spectacle herself. A glowing hand points directly at a confused Zhu Qiaosheng. Wah. An unseen force blasts Zhu Qiaosheng backward, sending him flying through the air. As he's thrown back, Zhu Qiaosheng quickly hides a small, dark object in his sleeve. Ruyan and her son watch in shock, suddenly realizing that the true harbinger of disaster might be the prince himself. Pleading on the ground, Zhu Qiaosheng begs the divine girl to let him go, fearing his father's arrival. Ruyan, now standing with her son and General Pei, looks down at her husband and asks what she is doing there. As she is led away, Ruyan asks her husband why the estate is surrounded by so many people, with the glowing Yuji still nearby. General Pei stares at the ethereal Yuji, wondering if the divine girl could actually be real. A carriage waits outside the estate walls in the misty night. The seventh prince's attendant hurries across the stone courtyard toward the waiting carriage. Inside, the prince thoughtfully considers the unexpected turn of events, the harbinger of disaster becoming the divine girl. His attendant joins him, and they discuss the city patrol's current activities. The prince decides they will simply wait and see how His Majesty intends to handle the newly revealed divine girl. Before the assembled family, an official unrolls a scroll and begins reading a decree from the emperor. Listening to the decree, Yuji thinks to herself that the plot is proceeding as expected. Her father will be sent to negotiate with the Northern Yin envoys. She foresees that if the negotiations fail, he will be thrown in jail, marking his seamless descent into disaster. The official finishes reading the Imperial decree, which tasks Lord Anping with negotiating peace with Northern Yin, prompting a smug Yi from Yuji who predicted it. The decree unexpectedly adds that Yuji, the divine daughter, must also enter the palace to bless the talks, leaving both her and Ruyan stunned. Ruyan and a veiled Yuji exchange a look of silent shock, processing the sudden twist in the Imperial command. Yuji internally rages, convinced that peace talks are a sham, and that this unexpected deviation from the original novel is a major death flag. She recalls that in the original story, her father dodged the negotiations by running off with his true love, and the whole divine girl plot never even happened. Held by a baffled Ruyan, Yuji is dumbfounded, realizing she somehow managed to change the story she was only supposed to be reading. Holding the Imperial edict, Ruyan worries to General Pei that sending her daughter, Xiao Wu, into failed talks is simply putting her in danger. Zhu Kaosheng steps forward, handing the scroll to General Pei, while questioning the sudden change to the already finalized negotiation team. General Pei stonewalls him, stating that His Majesty has his reasons and their only duty is to obey the decree. As the officials depart, Ruyan and her son watch with concern, while Yuji gets a sinking feeling that something is terribly wrong. Later, young Master Zhu asks his mother if she's heard about the Northern Yin prince who vanished before the talks, to which Ruyan replies she thought it was only a token envoy. He explains the emperor knows it's all for show, making the inclusion of their father and Xiao Wu highly suspicious, while a confused Yuji can't understand their murmuring. Young Master Zhu concludes that whether she's a harbinger or a divine girl, her involvement in politics makes her a threat to the throne, causing Yuji to panic that both she and her father are doomed. He adds that knowing their father, he has probably already figured out the danger he is in. Hearing a noise, Ruyan grows frantic, asking her son if someone is trying to take Xiao Wu, but he calmly reassures her that no assassin could get past the patrol guards. Young Master Zhu grimly thinks to himself that despite the guards, he doubts they will actually catch anyone. Yuji has a flash of insight, realizing her deadbeat dad must have planned a fake assassination to escape, and she's annoyed he was smart enough to think of it first. Ruyan suggests that if her husband can fake an assassination attempt, then so can they, proposing they use a sudden, unfortunate outbreak in the capital as an excuse for Xiao Wu's absence. Ruyan voices her worry that faking an illness might cause a real one, but Yuji seems unconcerned. Confidently thinking she has ad revival enabled, Yuji feigns sickness before the scene transitions to a pavilion as someone runs by. Inside, Ruyan is informed that her husband has sent someone to visit Xiao Wu, and they couldn't be stopped. Ruyan furiously forbids any visitors, declaring that her daughter is down with a sudden cold. Whoosh! A hand gently touches Yuji's forehead as she lies in bed, feigning illness under her blanket. Ruyan looks down at her daughter, her expression shifting from feigned concern to genuine shock. Touching the baby's head, Ruyan cries out in alarm that Xiao Wu's forehead is burning up. The scene plunges into a dark, watery abyss where a grown-up Yuji, wearing a delicate crown, floats unconscious. The older Yuji opens her vibrant red-orange eyes, looking up with a serious expression from the ethereal light. She is confronted by the back of a mysterious man with long, dark gray hair, wondering who he is. She reaches out a hand toward the silent man, calling out to him with a simple, "Hey." An older, confused Yuji looks at her hand, a tiny chibi version of herself appearing beside her, to exclaim, "What the I grew up!" Standing on a pier before the mysterious man, the older Yuji wonders if this surreal encounter is just a dream. The man turns to face her, revealing intense, orange-red eyes that match her own. Surprised, the older Yuji asks the man if he leveled up too, stepping back with a jolt. A stunning close-up reveals the mysterious man's sharp, determined orange-red eye. The older Yuji cautiously waves, starting to ask the man who he is. Stab! Without warning, the man impales her with a short sword. As he pulls her close, the older Yuji stares in wide-eyed confusion at her attacker. Splash! She falls into the water, while the baby Yuji, watching this dream unfold, vows that her killer will be toast when she respawns. Sinking into the depths, the older Yuji desperately wonders what kind of nightmare this is, and what she'll do if she gets another chance. Her eyes snap open in shock, her baby consciousness returning with a jolt. The dreamscape goes silent, as the older Yuji finds herself standing alone again on the pier. Realizing she respawned with a full checkpoint restore, the older Yuji claps her hands in relief. She looks around for the save point and spots the mysterious man's dark crown on the ground below. She's shocked to see the man with dark gray hair and a red earring standing before her once again. Stab 2. In a chibi flashback, the man stabs her a second time. Sinking into the water again, baby Yuji realizes she's stuck in a death loop as the system rewinds her save file. She reappears on the pier, looking bewildered by the repeating nightmare. This time, she anticipates the attack, grabbing the man's wrist just as he lunges with the sword. With a triumphant smirk, she tells him she read his move this time. The two are locked in a fierce chibi struggle, both gritting their teeth with equal determination. The story continues under a title page showing a young Yuji reading, while a mysterious man looms behind her. Back in the dream, an enraged older Yuji attacks the mysterious man, demanding to know why he keeps appearing in her dreams to kill her. In a cute chibi outburst, she furiously reminds him that he has stabbed her 3 whole times already. Confronting him on the pier, she tells him to go stab himself if he doesn't like her, instead of taking it out on her. The man, holding his sword, looks surprised, thinking that his blade should have connected by now. He realizes the attack did land on him, as Yuji smugly explains that since it's her dream, he wouldn't remember the thousands of times he's failed. The man thinks to himself with a subtle smile that she's wrong. He remembers the dream loop too. As he raises his blade again, a confused Yuji takes a step back, wondering what he's planning. She rushes forward to stop him, explaining they'll be stuck in the dream forever unless one of them yields, but he seems determined to continue. He asks why she didn't stop him the second time if she knew what was coming, prompting an indignant Yuji to shout that she never wanted to be stabbed. Flashing back to his intense glare, Yuji complains about his knife-ready face before the man quietly asks if she's ever considered that this loop is fate. Stunned, Yuji thinks how in cultivation dramas, this is exactly how fated couples meet, by stabbing each other in a dream. He smirks, dismissing her realization as a lucky guess and calling her dream girl. The man suggests they find the way out of the dreamscape together. Yuji internally mocks his questionable brains for not knowing the exit to his own dream, then realizes she doesn't know what her grown-up self looks like. Curious, she leans over the ethereal pier to see her reflection in the water below. Peeking over the edge, she cautiously looks down at her own watery image. She is left speechless by her beautiful reflection, with her chibi self gushing over how gorgeous she turned out. Deciding no man could be worthy of her, Yuji declares she will just fall for herself, much to the man's silent annoyance. A pair of characters flash across the screen, signaling a dramatic shift in the scene. Startled, Yuji turns to the man, asking if this dreamscape is actually his. Reaching out, she grabs onto his robe as the world around them begins to dissolve. Pulled into a dark void, she is shocked as her baby consciousness suddenly returns. A young woman with gray-green hair smiles in relief as Yuji finally wakes up in a strange bed, calling her junior sister. The young woman rushes out of the room to inform her master, leaving a bewildered Yuji behind. Sitting up, Yuji panics, wondering where she is, who these people are, and how she could fall asleep in a dream only to wake up in another world. An elderly man with a long gray beard enters the room, followed by another young attendant. A charming chapter break image shows a cute chibi Yuji beside the man from her dream. A promotional image for the series is displayed. An overhead view shows the elderly man and his 2 disciples approaching Yuji's bed. The elderly man introduces himself as the Valley Master of Medicine King Valley, and gently asks a groggy Yuji if she knows why she is there. A young man with a butterfly hairpin stares with wide, shocked eyes at Yuji's tiny, wiggling feet. Yuji internally recognizes the boy as her, quote, long-lost, unrelated by blood big brother, and is shocked to see him. Woo! The young man with the butterfly hairpin lunges forward, catching Yuji as she tumbles off the bed. Now in his arms, Yuji grabs his face, thinking that he looks older than he did before. The young man is baffled, thinking he heard her voice even though she didn't speak, but dismisses the strange feeling. Holding her close, he asks the silent Yuji if she recognizes him. Yuji begins to cry, thinking that true heartbreak is when someone you know pretends you're a stranger. Cradling the crying toddler, the young man turns to the Valley Master, Mr. Lee, stating that he has many questions. He then asks Mr. Lai to identify the little 3-year-old girl he is holding. Yuji is stunned by the revelation that she is now 3 years old. She panics, realizing her age is why she can't speak, and wonders if this new reality is yet another dream. The young man holds the distraught Yuji, who desperately tries to wake herself up. The Valley Master hands a letter to the young woman, explaining it's from Yuji's mother, though the woman doubts the toddler will understand it. The young woman, addressed as Jinger, opens the letter to read it. A vision of Ruyan appears, reading her letter to Little Wu, explaining she was sent to Medicine King Valley for treatment and must behave as a disciple. Jinger and the young man try to console a sullen Yuji, telling her not to be sad. Yuji throws a tantrum, silently screaming that she doesn't want to learn medicine, causing Jinger to wonder if she heard the girl's inner voice again. Jinger tries to explain that the valley also teaches poisons, earning a bonk on the head from the master for scaring the child. The Valley Master then addresses the young man, confirming that Master Mingye sent him to recover and that Yuji will be his senior brother before the young man asks about his own illness. As a young Yuji approaches, a group of people flee in terror, with one woman screaming that she's back to make them test poison again. A few years later, a slightly older Yuji stands with her arms crossed as a young attendant named Z reports that she heard Auntie Lee has a cold and is mixing medicine for her. Splash! A panicked Gigi drops a basin of water, telling Yuji to ignore the rumors and claiming that it's she who isn't feeling well. Yuji points at a small, barking gray dog, identifying him as Fugui. Cuddling the dog, Yuji cheerfully asks if Fugi has been neutered yet, mentioning a new pig gelding technique she just learned, which horrifies Gigi. Gigi flees in terror, screaming that Fugi hasn't even had a chance to be a father yet, leaving a confused Yuji behind. Frustrated, Yuji complains that she's only trying to help, but this misunderstood life is exhausting because everyone treats her like a plague. Yuji runs through a building, calling out and wondering where he is. She peers through a window, a worried thought crossing her mind. Peeking around a folding screen, she spots a hand resting on the side of a wooden tub. She finds the young man with the butterfly hairpin submerged in a bath, his eyes closed. He opens his eyes in alarm as a curious Yuji appears beside the tub, holding up a snack for him. Gulp, gulp, gulp. The young man suddenly struggles, sinking under the water as Yuji's chopsticks accidentally knock his hand. Whoa! Losing her balance, Yuji tumbles headfirst into the bath with a massive splash. A soaked and sputtering Yuji bobs in the water, looking dazed. The young man catches the drenched girl, angrily demanding to know what on earth she is doing. Yuji claims she was afraid he would drown and came to save him, but he thinks about his own tendency to pass out during storms and how he was worried she'd fall asleep in the bath again. He looks on with a contemplative expression, his wet hair framing his face. Holding her in the water, he sarcastically asks if her rescue plan involved drowning him first, then points out that she's more likely to drown than he is. He looks down sadly, explaining that the master keeps brushing him off and would have cured his amnesia long ago if he intended to. Dangling from his grip, Yuji insists on staying, explaining a storm is coming and he'll have nightmares again if she's not there. His expression softens as he realizes she is genuinely worried about him. He recalls how, for the past 3 years, she has always come to stay with him during storms, flashing back to them, sleeping soundly in bed. He thinks back to a memory of an older Yuji on a swing, realizing that when she's near, his nightmares rarely come. An enraged general questions why the treaty is being torn apart now. A blood-splattered general stands defiantly, calling peace talks cowardly and declaring he has petitioned the king to seize enemy lands. Identified as General Bai Lei, the young man's uncle, he vows to die if his campaign fails, as the young man watches with concern. The young man reaches out desperately, pleading with his uncle not to start a war they are destined to lose. He walks alone through a bleak, ethereal landscape. He glances back with a look of profound sorrow and resignation. In a grand throne room, an official rushes in, shouting for a report. Kneeling before the throne, an official announces that General Bai Lei has fled with his old troops. The emperor leans forward from his throne, shocked by the news. 2 advisors murmur about the treachery of the border clans and worry how they will answer for the military defeat and the general's desertion. An official proposes a solution. Send the 7th prince, who signed the treaty with his uncle, to the enemy nation as a hostage to prove their sincerity. The young 7th prince looks on grimly, wondering which choice his father, the emperor, will make. The emperor turns his attention to his son, asking if the 7th prince is still training under Master Mingye. The prince scoffs, then breaks into bitter, hysterical laughter, thinking how pitiful it is that his kingdom broke the pact, yet he is the one who must bear the blame. He clutches his head in anguish, his face a mask of rage and despair, as he wonders why he is always the one to be abandoned. Back in the present, Yuji wakes to find him tossing in his sleep, muttering her name from a past life. Why? Seventh brother. Why?